Imagine a remote, dark, and unimaginably quiet corner of the universe.
Okay.
And this corner is just poured out and scattered into countless swirling solar systems.
Right, just on a massive scale.
Exactly. And in this vast, sprawling cosmos, there is one tiny, utterly insignificant star.
Just a speck.
Yeah, total speck. And upon this floating rock, some clever, desperate little animals managed to invent a neat trick.
A trick.
Right. They call this trick cognition. They invent knowing. They invent intellect.
And this is where it gets really dark.
It does. Because in the text we are exploring today, this specific invention is described as the haughtiest, most mendacious, most arrogant moment in the entire history of the world.
Wow.
But it's just a moment. Nature takes a breath, the tiny star congeals, it freezes over, and the clever animals inevitably die.
They just wipe out.
Completely. And the universe simply moves on, completely and utterly unchanged by anything those animals thought they knew.
I mean, it is an almost paralyzingly bleak fable.
Really is.
It's the absolute definition of cosmic pessimism. You read that opening and you immediately feel like the ground dissolve beneath your feet.
Yeah, you feel totally insignificant.
Exactly. But it is a profoundly necessary starting point for what we are undertaking today in this deep dive.
Right.
That fable, with its indifferent universe and its doomed animals, well, it sets the stage for what is arguably the most total teardown of human arrogance in the history of philosophy.
Which brings us to our mission for this deep dive.
Yes, let's unpack it.
So we are stepping into the mind of Friedrich Nietzsche. And the year is 1873.
1873, right.
And we're doing this through a text called On Truth and Lies in an Extra-Moral Sense.
Or, in the original German, über Wahrheit und Lüge im isomoralischen Sinn.
Thank you for the pronunciation there.
Anytime.
So we are pulling from the text itself, which actually, surprisingly, sat unpublished in his notebooks during his lifetime.
Which is wild to think about.
It is. And we're also pulling from a comprehensive scholarly analysis of his arguments.
Right.
So, for you listening, our goal is to show you how this single, seemingly quiet, unpublished essay managed to plant the seeds for the massive intellectual earthquakes of the 20th century.
Yeah, it really set off a bomb.
It did. We are going to decode the main themes, paraphrase his core arguments in detail, and most importantly, uncover why he famously called truth a mobile army of metaphors.
I love that phrase. A mobile army of metaphors.
It's so good. But to really grasp the sheer destructive power of this essay, we have to, situate ourselves in Germany in the early 1870s.
Right. We have to understand the battlefield Nietzsche was surveying.
Because he wasn't the mustache-twirling prophet declaring the death of God just yet, right?
No, not at this point.
At this point, he is a young academic.
And crucially, he wasn't originally trained as a philosopher.
Wait, really? What was he trained in?
He was a classical philologist.
A philologist. Okay, so how does that factor in?
Well, that background is actually the skeleton key to this entire text.
Okay, unpack that for us.
So a philologist studies the history, the structure, and the historical development of language and classical texts.
Ah, okay, so they're looking at words.
Exactly. They trace how a single Greek or Latin word shifts, bends, and completely morphs its meaning over, 1,000 years.
Wow.
They look at how grammar is historically constructed, often through total accidents or misunderstandings.
So while a traditional philosopher might look at the word truth and see this shining, eternal pillar holding up the universe.
Right, a fixed thing.
Yeah, a philologist looks at the exact same word and sees a messy human artifact.
Exactly. They see a tool that has been dropped, chipped, and repurposed across centuries.
That makes so much sense.
And this specific philological training gave him the perfect weapon to dismantle the prevailing philosophical systems of his day.
Because he knew how fragile the words were to begin with.
Yes. And in 1873, the German intellectual landscape was highly chaotic.
Total mess.
The old massive systems were decaying. For decades, Hegelian idealism had been the dominant force.
Hegelian idealism?
Yeah, the grand sweeping belief that human history was the rational unfolding of absolute spirit.
Okay.
But that had faded. It had lost its grip on the culture.
Leaving a massive power vacuum.
Exactly. And two major factions stepped in to fight for control of that vacuum.
Okay, who were they?
On one side, you had the Neo-Kantians.
The Neo-Kantians.
Right. These were thinkers like Friedrich Albert Lange, who wrote The History of Materialism.
Which was a deeply influential book for Nietzsche, right?
Very much so. So the Neo-Kantians were trying to revive the philosophy of Immanuel Kant, but stripped of any mysticism.
Okay, what was their main argument?
their central tenet was what we might call a form of transcendental idealism.
That sounds dense.
It is a bit. Basically, they argued that the thing in itself, the ultimate base reality of the universe, is forever blocked from human access.
So we can't ever really see it.
Right. We can never know reality as it actually is. We can only ever know the world as it appears to our highly specific human senses.
Okay, to make that concrete for the listener, let's use a camera analogy.
That's a great idea.
So the Neo-Kantians believed the human mind is like a camera with a permanent, unremovable filter built into the lens.
Yes,
You
exactly.
can take a picture of the world, but the picture's always going to be tinted, distorted, or shaped by the filter of human perception.
Right.
You can never, ever take the filter off to see the real world.
That captures transcendental idealism perfectly.
Okay, so that's faction one. Who is faction two?
Now, on the completely opposite side of the battlefield, you had the positivists and the materialists.
Okay, imperialists.
These were thinkers like Ludwig Buchner and Hermann von Helmholtz, and they were riding the incredible surging wave of the Industrial Revolution.
Right, rapid scientific discovery.
Exactly. They were looking at steam engines and chemistry and saying, look at what we can build.
So they were very pro-science.
Oh, absolutely. They pushed for the absolute sovereignty of the scientific method. They championed what we call naive realism.
Naive realism, meaning what?
Well, meaning they argued that every single phenomenon in the universe could be reduced to mechanical, physical laws.
Okay.
And more importantly, they believed science gave us objective, transparent access to reality.
So going back to the camera analogy, the materialists believe that the camera lens of human science is crystal clear.
Yes.
No filter, no smudge.
None at all.
If you use the scientific method, the photograph you take is a perfect one-to-one replica of reality.
That was their stance, yeah.
So you have these two warring factions. One says the lens is permanently filtered, the other says the lens is perfectly clear.
Right.
And Nietzsche, the philologist, walks onto this battlefield and essentially says to both sides.
You are both delusional.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He says there is no camera. You just painted a picture, you completely forgot you painted it, and now you are aggressively debating the optical quality of a lens that doesn't exist.
It is brilliant. It is a total rejection of both naive realism and transcendental idealism.
He just bypasses both of them entirely.
He chooses a radically different third path. He launches a critique not just of the scientific method, but of cognition itself.
Which is huge.
It is. He argues that language and intellect actively distort and invent reality, rather than just passively reflecting it or filtering it.
Which raises an immediate practical question.
What's that?
Well, if this essay was so devastating to the entire scientific and philosophical establishment, why did he leave it unpublished?
Right.
We have the text today, obviously, but it sat in a notebook.
Well, the scholarly consensus suggests a few possibilities.
Okay.
It was likely a working draft for a much larger unfinished project concerning the philosopher's relationship to truth.
So it just wasn't finished.
That's one theory. But practically speaking, he may have realized it was simply too dangerous.
Too dangerous. Really?
Think about it. To stand up in 1873 and tell the entire academic establishment that their life's work, their grand, objective scientific discoveries were actually just forgotten linguistic illusions.
Yeah, that's not going to go over well.
That is a very fast way to get yourself excommunicated from professional academia.
So he kept the weapon in its sheath for the time being.
He did.
Well, let's pull that weapon out and look at its blade. Let's go back to that opening fable about the frozen star.
Okay, let's do it.
Because that cosmic perspective is the first major strike in Nietzsche's campaign. He is deliberately deflating the human intellect.
It is a calculated assault on anthropocentrism.
Explain that for the listener.
Well, for centuries, humans have treated the intellect as a divine spark. We view our ability to reason, to do mathematics, to categorize nature as evidence that we have a transcendent connection to the universe.
We think the universe cares about our thoughts.
Exactly. We think we are the main characters of reality.
But Nietzsche points out the utter absurdity of this biological narcissism, right?
He really does. He suggests that if we were somehow able to communicate with a gnat, a tiny buzzing insect, we would discover that even the gnat feels it is the flying center of the world.
That's hilarious.
But it's true. The gnat has a perspective, and from that perspective, everything revolves around it.
So when the human philosopher looks through a telescope, he feels the eyes of the universe are focused on his brilliant mind.
Right.
But to the indifferent forces of nature, the philosopher is no more central and no more necessary than the gnat.
We are just an evolutionary accident. The intellect is a temporary expedient.
Just a flash in the pan.
It emerged for a brief moment in cosmic time, and when we are gone, nothing will change.
But this forces a difficult question, doesn't it?
It does. If the intellect isn't a divine tool for communing with eternal truths, what actually is it?
Yeah. Why do we have this massive energy-consuming brain?
And this is where Nietzsche introduces incredibly profound, almost Darwinian biological undertones.
Which is striking because he is writing this before evolutionary theory was completely integrated into German philosophy.
Right. It was still very new. But he looks at human beings as animals, and he observes that we are incredibly weak.
We truly are. I mean, we are deeply physically disadvantaged in the state of nature.
Yeah, think about it.
We don't have the sharp fangs of a tiger. We don't have the heavy horns of a bull.
We lack thick armored scales. We lack the speed of a cheetah. We don't have venom.
We are these soft, delicate, painfully vulnerable creatures thrown into a violent world.
We cannot fight the battle of existence with physical weapons.
So how on earth did we survive?
Well, Nietzsche argues that our survival strategy, our chief weapon, is dissimulation.
Dissimulation.
Deception, disguise, flattery, fraud.
Wow.
The intellect did not evolve to help us discover the truth about the universe. The intellect evolved as an organ of deception to help a weak, soft creature trick its way into surviving another day.
So the intellect is a survival mechanism, and its primary function is lying.
Exactly.
But the most vital lie it tells is not to predators or to rival humans. The most vital lie the intellect tells is to ourselves.
Yes. It creates a blinding fog of vanity that makes us think our existence is incredibly valuable and secure.
It actively hides the terrifying, chaotic reality of nature from our conscious minds.
He uses this chilling, visceral imagery in the text. He says that humanity is resting on the pitiless, the greedy, the insatiable, the murderous, and we are hanging in dreams on the back of a tiger.
On the back of a tiger.
We are literally riding a killing machine, but the intellect functions like a dream state, allowing us to sleep soundly on the tiger's back, blissfully unaware of the fangs just inches away.
That is such a powerful image.
It's terrifying. He argues that nature deliberately threw away the key to the chamber of consciousness.
What does that mean, practically?
It means we are locked in a delusive knowledge. We don't even have access to the truth of our own biology.
Right.
Most of us have no conscious awareness of the complex flow of our blood, the electrical vibrations of our nervous system, the constant cellular death and rebirth inside us.
We're just totally blind to it.
The intellect keeps us delightfully ignorant of all this machinery. If we could actually perceive the raw, churning, violent reality of existence, we would be paralyzed with terror.
To drive home just how wretched and unbearable, raw, unfiltered existence really is, he points to a historical anecdote.
He does. It's about the son of Gotthold Ephraim Lessing, a famous German writer.
Right. I remember this from the text. The text notes that Lessing's son was dragged into the world during a brutal, violent birth using forceps.
Yeah.
And an infant died the very same day.
It is a very dark reference, but Nietzsche uses it with a wry, tragic irony.
How so?
He remarks that the infant actually demonstrated tremendous understanding by fleeing existence so swiftly.
Oh, wow. That's bleak.
The implication is that if any of us truly saw the world for what it is, pure struggle, pure pain, an indifferent void, we would all want to leave immediately.
So the intellect is the grand illusion that convinces us to stay, to endure, and to value our own lives.
Precisely.
But wait, this brings up a massive contradiction.
Let's hear it.
If our fundamental nature is deception, if we are biologically wired to lie, to flatter, and to wear disguises just to survive, and we are constantly fluttering around the flame of our own vanity, where does the concept of truth come from?
Yes.
If humanity is a species of born liars, how did we ever invent the impulse to seek the truth?
That is the pivot point of the entire essay. Nietzsche completely strips away any divine or romantic origin for truth.
He doesn't believe truth comes from God.
Not at all. And he certainly doesn't believe humans have a noble, innate desire for honesty.
So where does it come from?
His explanation is deeply pragmatic and wonderfully cynical. Truth is a social invention born entirely out of necessity and boredom.
Boredom. That's funny.
Yeah, because even though we are weak and deceptive, we also want to live in groups. We are gregarious creatures.
It is safer to be in a group, and honestly, it is less boring.
Right. But you cannot have a functioning society if every single person is constantly deceiving, stealing, and murdering everyone else.
Right. To exist socially, Humanity must find a way to end what Thomas Hobbes called the bellum omnium contra omnes.
The war of all against all.
Exactly. If everyone is fighting for the same scarce resources using deception and violence, the species dies out.
So we need a truce. We need a peace treaty.
Okay, think about two rival factions stranded on an island with limited food.
Good analogy.
If they just keep raiding each other's camps in the dark, they will both starve or bleed to death. The stakes are mutual annihilation.
Right.
So they meet in the daylight and establish rules. They point to a river and say, everything on the left is yours, everything on the right is mine.
They don't do this because God told them to.
Exactly. Or because it's an ultimate moral good. They do it so they can finally sleep through the night without getting a rock thrown at their heads.
Nietzsche's arguing that the very first clause of humanity's grand peace treaty is the establishment of linguistic conventions.
Linguistic conventions. Meaning we have to agree on what things are called.
Yes. This exact moment is the invention of truth. It is simply a uniformly valid and binding designation of things that we all agree to abide by.
And this reframes the entire concept of a lie, doesn't it?
Completely. In this society, a liar is simply someone who misuses the agreed-upon words.
But this is a vital distinction.
Yeah.
Society does not punish the liar because it has a deep, pure love for objective truth.
No, not at all.
Society punishes the liar because it hates the harmful, hostile consequences of a broken agreement.
He provides a brilliant, simple example in the text. Imagine someone uses the universally agreed-upon designation for having a lot of money, and they say, I am rich.
Okay.
But the material reality is that they have no money. Their state is poor. They are inverting the terms.
Now, if they just say this alone in the woods, nobody cares.
Right. Doesn't matter.
But if they say, I am rich to defraud someone in a business transaction, society steps in.
Yes. Society excludes and punishes that person, not because they offended the pristine, eternal goddess of truth. They are punished because they caused economic and social harm to the group.
They broke the peace treaty.
Exactly. This is where the phrase, in an extra-moral sense from the essay's title, truly locks into place.
Ah, I see.
Nietzsche is surgically removing the moral halo we place on truth. Truth isn't a moral absolute. It is a practical enforcement mechanism.
In fact, if a lie is completely harmless or even beneficial to our comfort, society loves it.
We flock to the theater to be lied to by actors.
We tell polite social fictions to keep dinners from devolving into arguments.
We only care about truth as an instrumental, life-preserving tool.
We are socially obligated to use the usual metaphors. The peace treaty demands it.
Nietzsche says it is an obligation to lie gregariously and a style binding for all.
And because we do this unconsciously, generation after generation, for centuries, a psychological shift happens.
We forget the origin of the rules.
Right. We forget that our ancestors merely agreed on a peace treaty.
And through that collective amnesia, that long forgetting, we eventually arrive at a feeling of truth.
We take a practical social contract and elevate it into a mystical, absolute law of the universe.
Exactly.
Okay, so if truth is just a localized social agreement, a peace treaty, what does this mean for language itself?
Well, this is where it gets really interesting.
When society agreed on these designations, were they actually connecting words to reality? Does the word tree have any fundamental objective tether to the physical, bark-covered thing growing in the dirt?
This brings us to the most radical, foundational argument of the essay. Nietzsche asks the definitive question: is language the adequate expression of all realities?
And his answer?
His answer is a categorical, resounding no. He argues that language is nothing more than a series of arbitrary, heavily distorted translations.
Let's walk through the actual mechanics of this, because he breaks the creation of a word down into two distinct metaphorical leaps.
Right.
And with each leap, we move further and further away from reality, jumping completely out of one sphere and into an alien one.
So the first leap begins in the physical body.
Okay.
Imagine you reach out and touch a hot stove. Your biological nervous system experiences a raw physical stimulus.
It burnt.
Right. But immediately, your brain translates that physical nerve stimulus into a mental image or a percept in your head.
Okay, so from physical touch to mental image.
That translation from physical biology to mental image is what Nietzsche calls the first metaphor. It is entirely unjustified by logic.
Why is it unjustified?
Because you are making a massive arbitrary jump from the realm of the body into the realm of the mind. They are totally different spheres.
Then comes the second metaphor. You take that mental image in your head and you attempt to communicate it to someone else.
Yes.
To do this, You force air through your vocal cords to copy that internal image into a sound wave, a word.
You have just jumped from the realm of mental imagery into the realm of acoustic physics.
So by the time you say the word hot, you are 2 massive leaps away from the actual reality of the stove.
Every single step introduces distortion.
To illustrate just how absurd and arbitrary this process is, Nietzsche uses a fascinating metaphor of a deaf man, doesn't he?
He does. Imagine a man who is completely deaf from birth. He has never heard music. He has no sensory conception of what a tone is.
Okay.
But this deaf man observes Chladni's sound figures.
Who is Chladni?
Ernst Chladni was a physicist who discovered that if you sprinkle sand on a metal plate and vibrate the plate with a violin bow, the sound frequencies cause the sand to dance.
Right, and they arrange themselves into beautiful geometric patterns.
Exactly. So our deaf man is watching the sand. He sees the patterns form. He deduces that the vibration of the string is causing the sand to move, and he proudly declares, now I know what men call tone.
That's crazy to think about.
Nietzsche is saying that the deaf man is exactly like us when we use language.
We look at the sand, the word, the acoustic sound, and we arrogantly believe we understand the actual essence of the thing itself.
But we don't. We only possess metaphors of things. The word hot is just sand dancing on a plate. It is not the heat of the universe.
And if you look at the structure of languages, the arbitrariness becomes painfully obvious.
Oh, absolutely. He points to how we arbitrarily assign gender to nouns. In German, a tree is masculine der Baum. A plant is feminine die Pflanze.
What objective reality is that reflecting?
It's nonsense.
Total nonsense.
He also looks at etymology. We call a snake a serpent. The root of that word merely describes sinuosity, a winding motion.
But a worm also winds. We could just as easily call a worm a serpent.
When we create a word, we take a single arbitrary characteristic of a thing and let it stand for the whole.
This is essentially what a metonymy is, right?
Yes. A metonymy is a figure of speech where you call something by the name of an attribute associated with it.
Like calling a monarch the crown or calling corporate executives suits.
Precisely. Nietzsche is arguing that all language is basically metonymy. We take one tiny fraction of reality, turn it into a sound, and pretend it represents the entire object.
And if words perfectly captured reality, there would only be one language?
That's a great point. The sheer fact that thousands of different languages exist side by side proves that no one is expressing the objective thing in itself.
The creator of language doesn't care about objective reality. They just grab the most daring, useful metaphors they can find to designate the relations of things to humans.
But Nietzsche doesn't stop at words. He takes this critique and applies it to our highest cognitive achievement concepts.
Right. How do we form an abstract idea?
He introduces a phrase here that is central to his epistemology, equating the unequal.
Equating the unequal. Let's look closely at a leaf on a tree to explain this.
Okay.
If you walk into a forest and truly observe nature, you will quickly realize that absolutely no 2 leaves are identical.
Right. They're all unique.
Every single leaf has a slightly different shape, a different shade of green, different ridges, different patterns of veins, varying states of decay.
Nature produces infinite, unequal individuality.
But the human brain cannot handle infinite individuality. If we had to invent a new, unique word for every single leaf in the forest, our brains would overload.
I couldn't communicate.
So what do? We cheat.
We do. We engage in a massive act of omission. We arbitrarily drop all the individual differences. We intentionally forget the differentiating qualities of shape, color, and size.
And we construct this mental concept, the leaf.
We create this grand illusion that there is some primal, perfect form of a leaf out there in nature, and that all the actual physical leaves we see are just clumsy, unskilled copies of it.
Which is a total fiction.
It is. Nature knows no forms, no concepts, no species. It only knows an inaccessible X that we can never truly perceive. We equate the unequal purely to survive and process information.
You know, this makes me think of modern digital technology, specifically lossy compression.
Oh, that's an interesting connection.
If you go to a live concert, the audio in the room is infinite, rich, and uncompressed. But to fit that entire concert onto a tiny digital file on your phone, you have to compress it into an MP3.
Right, you have to shrink it.
To make the file small, the algorithm literally throws away huge chunks of audio data frequencies. It assumes your ear won't notice. It drops the individual differences of the sound.
I see where you're going with this.
When we take the infinite complexity of physical leaves and compress them into the concept leaf, We are applying a lossy compression algorithm to reality.
We throw away all the unique data to save mental processing space.
Exactly. Nietzsche is saying that humanity is a species that has mistaken the heavily compressed, data-poor MP3 file for the actual live concert.
That analogy extends perfectly into how we process the world today, especially if you look at machine learning or even human stereotypes.
Oh, stereotyping, yeah.
A machine learning algorithm categorizes images by stripping away outliers and finding a blunt average pattern. We do this with humans all the time. We equate unequal individuals and group them under a single concept or stereotype to save cognitive energy.
And Nietzsche applies this to abstract moral concepts too, doesn't he?
He does. The text uses the example of honesty. We observe a person performing a variety of different, highly complex, context-dependent actions.
Okay.
We strip away the context, equate the unequal actions, and say, he acted that way because of his honesty.
We invent an occult quality, a mystical, invisible force called honesty, and we pretend it is the cause of the actions.
It's a tautology. We compress the data, label it, and then convince ourselves the label is a real thing driving the universe.
Which brings us to the absolute centerpiece of the essay. This is the moment where Nietzsche lays out his ultimate definition of truth.
Arguably one of the most famous, devastating paragraphs in the history of philosophy.
He asks, what therefore is truth?
And his answer is just incredible.
I want to read his answer directly because every single word carries weight. He writes, a mobile army of metaphors, metonymies, anthropomorphisms, in short, a sum of human relations which became poetically and rhetorically intensified, metamorphosed, adorned, and after long usage seems to a nation fixed, canonic, and binding truths, are illusions of which one has forgotten that they are illusions, worn-out metaphors which have become powerless to affect the sense as coins, which have their obverse effaced, and now are no longer of account as coins, but merely as metal.
It is a stunning passage. It completely upends the Western philosophical tradition.
Truths are not discoveries waiting for us out in the universe.
No, they are creations. They are entirely products of human imagination and linguistic accident.
Let's focus on that brilliant coin analogy at the end.
I love the coin analogy.
When a coin is freshly minted, it has a face on it, an image, a stamp of a king or an eagle that says, this piece of metal signifies $1. It has a symbolic, metaphorical value.
Right.
But imagine that coin gets passed around in a bustling market for 500 years. It rubs against millions of thumbs. It clinks against other coins in pockets.
Over and over.
Eventually, the image completely rubs off. It is effaced. You can no longer see the stamp. At that point, it ceases to function as a symbolic coin. It's just treated as a raw, literal piece of metal.
And Nietzsche argues that our words, our truths, are exactly the same.
They lose their stamp.
When a metaphor is first spoken, when the first human translated a nerve stimulus into a sound, it was vivid, poetic, and flashed with sensory power. It was clearly a metaphor.
But after a society uses that same word millions of times over centuries, the metaphorical image wears off.
We forget it was ever a creative leap. We start treating the word as if it is a literal, raw piece of reality.
Truth is institutionalized forgetting. It is a collective amnesia where a society forgets the creative, artistic origins of its own language.
So humanity takes these worn-out, effaced coins, and we don't just use them to talk.
No, we use them to build.
Exactly. We take these concepts and we construct massive, towering intellectual structures.
Nietzsche describes this edifice of concepts using architectural imagery. He compares it to a Roman columbarium.
A columbarium?
Right, a massive rigid stone vault filled with thousands of little niches used to hold urns. Or he calls it a templum in the sky.
He concedes that humans are, in fact, architectural geniuses. We have managed to pile up an infinitely complex dome of ideas, laws, scientific categories, privileges, and subordinations.
But the fatal flaw is the foundation. We built this colossal, heavy dome on a movable foundation.
As he puts it, we built it on running water. It is an edifice piled up out of cobwebs.
He draws a fascinating, humbling contrast here between humanity and the bee.
Oh, there's a bee analogy.
We look at a beehive and we marvel at its geometric perfection. But the bee builds its cells using wax, a material it gathers from nature external to itself.
Man, on the other hand, builds his colossal structures using the much more delicate material of concepts.
And where those concepts come from?
He has to manufacture them entirely from within himself. Man's achievement is architecturally far more complex than the bee's, but it is built entirely out of his own illusions.
To keep a massive dome built on running water from collapsing, you need a powerful psychological defense mechanism.
You really do.
You brought up earlier this idea of a double forgetting, which the scholarly analysis highlights as the linchpin of his epistemology. How does this double forgetting actually keep the dome standing?
Well, it is a brilliant, vicious cycle. The first amnesia is what we just discussed. We forget that our concepts are metaphors. We forget the creative leap from nerve stimulus to word.
Right, we forget the invention.
But if that were the only amnesia, someone might eventually notice the gap. So, to completely secure the illusion, human psychology deploys a second amnesia.
We forget that we forgot.
Exactly. We bury the memory of the amnesia itself under layers of social conditioning and scientific pride.
We hide the evidence, and then we burn the map to the hiding place.
That's a great way to put it. And this double forgetting seals the vault. It makes us genuinely, fervently believe that the conceptual world we built is the objective, literal reality of the universe.
We take our human concepts to be divine discoveries.
This leads to the profound realization that all human knowledge is entirely anthropomorphic.
It is entirely shaped like us. The text says that when a seeker of truth investigates the world, they think they are discovering the secrets of the cosmos, but they are just looking at the infinitely protracted echo of an original sound man.
We just see copies of our own archetype reflected back at us everywhere we look.
Our entire procedure is to apply man as the measure of all things.
We think we are looking through a telescope at the stars, but we are actually just staring intently into a mirror.
The relation between the subject, us, and the object, the universe, is not causal. It is not an accurate transmission of data.
Nietzsche explicitly calls it an aesthetical relation.
It's not cognitive or objective, it's aesthetic. A stammering translation into a foreign tongue. We freely compose and invent an intermediate sphere between us and reality.
And this is where the essay delivers its fatal blow to Immanuel Kant.
We touched on Kant earlier, but let's dig into the mechanics of this because Kant was the titan of German philosophy.
He really was.
How exactly does Nietzsche use this idea of an aesthetic translation to dismantle Kant's view of time and space?
So Kant argued that space and time, along with mathematics and causality, are the necessary conditions of human experience.
Right.
Kant essentially said, yes, we can't know the ultimate reality, but the filter on our camera, time and space, is absolute and universal. We cannot experience anything without filtering it through time and space.
And Nietzsche looks at Kant and says, you didn't go nearly far enough.
Nietzsche argues that time, space, and mathematics are not universal, necessary filters. They are just human conventions.
They are part of the peace treaty.
Exactly. They have zero claim to universal validity outside of human biology and grammar.
We look up at the night sky, we track the planets, and we are absolutely blown away by the mathematical rigor of their orbits.
We study chemistry and see perfect, inviolable laws of nature.
We think the universe speaks math.
But Nietzsche counters by saying, of course we see mathematics out there. We are the ones who put it there.
He likens humanity to a spider spinning a web.
Yes. We spin the mathematical grid of time and space out of our own biology. We project it over the universe like a net. And then we step back and say, wow, look at how perfectly mathematical the universe is.
We are just marveling at the very qualities we ourselves attach to things. We are amazed by our own cobwebs.
It's a massive blow to human ego.
If that is true, if we are completely trapped in the spider web of our own making, if this dome of concepts is all we have, and objective truth is forever out of reach, how do we not just suffocate?
Right. How do we live with this?
Is there any way for a human being to experience reality without these rigid, lifeless concepts? Are we just doomed to be walking calculators, swapping effaced coins until we die?
This is where the essay shifts from pure destruction into something incredibly beautiful and liberating.
Oh, finally some good news.
Because Nietzsche says that the fundamental human impulse, that deep, burning drive to form metaphors that we use to create language in the first place, is not completely satisfied by rigid science and concepts.
It refuses to be entirely tamed. It demands to be used.
And so it seeks a new realm of action. It finds a new riverbed.
And that new riverbed is art and myth.
Yeah.
Which takes us into the realm of the intuitive man.
Right. While science and rationality work irresistibly at building that great, gloomy columbarium of ideas, cementing the categories, establishing the rule, making everything predictable, art comes along and continually smashes the framework to pieces.
Art confuses the cells and rubrics. It introduces forbidden metaphors and unheard-of combinations of ideas.
It takes the waking world, which the rational man has made so orderly and boring and safe, and it reshapes it to be as motley, irregular, incoherent, and attractive as a dream.
Dreams are incredibly important to his argument here.
They are. Nietzsche cites a wonderful thought experiment by the French philosopher Blaise Pascal.
Oh, I remember this.
Pascal said, imagine a humble artisan who works back-breaking labor all day, but every single night for 12 straight hours, this artisan dreams that he is a king.
Okay.
Pascal argued that this artisan would be just as happy as a king who dreamed every night for 12 hours that he was a humble artisan.
Because what is reality? Reality is simply whatever is most reliably and consistently present to our consciousness.
If the dream is consistent enough, it carries the exact same psychological weight as the waking world.
Exactly. Art and myth tap into that dream state power. They remind us that the conceptual world of science is just one possible interpretation of reality, not the definitive one.
The metaphorical impulse that built the prison of concepts can also be used to break out of it.
To explore how human beings navigate these two realms, Nietzsche sets up a contrast between two distinct archetypes, the rational man and the intuitive man.
Let's look at the rational man. Nietzsche describes him as someone who binds his life entirely to reason, to concepts, and to abstractions.
His primary goal in life is safety.
Yes. He uses ideas as a shield to ward off misfortune and to avoid being swept away by the chaos and pain of life. He strives for the greatest possible freedom from suffering.
He gives a very striking example of a Stoic philosopher. When a heavy, violent thundercloud bursts, the Stoic doesn't run around screaming in terror.
No, he simply wraps his cloak tightly around him, puts on a mask with dignified, unreadable features, and walks slowly and measuredly away through the rain.
He is governed by prudence and foresight. His concepts protect him, but they also detach him from the raw experience of life.
But then you have the intuitive man. The intuitive man completely ignores these practical needs for safety.
He looks at the real world of concepts, the world of the rational man, and finds it utterly fake and lifeless.
For the intuitive man, the only reality worth living in is the realm of appearance, illusion, and beauty. He brandishes his weapons to rule over life through art and dissimulation.
And Nietzsche points to ancient Greece as the ultimate historical example of a culture ruled by the intuitive man.
He vividly describes a world that is mystically excitable. In the mind of an ancient Greek, the world is not a rigid scientific machine.
Every tree might suddenly open up and speak as a nymph.
A god might masquerade as a bull to carry away a virgin.
The goddess Athena herself might drive her chariot through the bustling markets of Athens.
The ancient Greeks lived in a world where nature was basically a huge, continuous, joyful masquerade of the gods.
They viewed the world as a playground of metaphors rather than a columbarium of concepts.
The intuitive man doesn't just try to ward off evil. He experiences a continuous inpouring of enlightenment, enlivenment, and redemption. He reaps a massive harvest of joy.
But I have to point out a flaw here.
What's that?
It sounds like Nietzsche is heavily romanticizing the intuitive man. He paints him as this poetic, liberated hero. But doesn't he also acknowledge that there's a steep, often brutal price to pay for living in a dream world?
Oh, definitely.
Doesn't the rational man's toolkit of science and concepts actually keep us from, falling into ditches and breaking our legs?
You're absolutely right to point that out, and Nietzsche does not shy away from that reality. He is deeply ambivalent.
He sees the downside?
He highlights the tragic flaw of the intuitive man. When he suffers much more deeply and intensely than the rational man.
Because the intuitive man rejects concepts and foresight, he cannot learn from experience in the same protective way.
He will fall into the exact same ditch over and over again. He is irrational in his sorrow.
When tragedy strikes, he cries aloud and finds no consolation, whereas the Stoic just wraps his cloak tighter and relies on his conceptual framework to blunt the pain.
So Nietzsche doesn't unequivocally endorse one over the other. He admires the architectural genius, the survival mechanisms, and the Stoic dignity of the rational man.
But he yearns for the joyful creativity, the artistic vitality, and the liberated power of the intuitive man.
Yes, and that ambivalence is a testament to the depth of the essay. He recognizes that human beings are irreducibly paradoxical.
We desperately need the rigid structures of the rational man to survive the thunderstorm.
But if we only have those structures, life becomes a sterile, suffocating prison. We need the intuitive man to smash the structures, let the air back in, and remind us that we are artists, not just calculators.
So Nietzsche writes this essay in 1873, wrestles with these massive paradigms, and leaves it unpublished in a notebook.
But it did not stay buried.
When it was finally published posthumously, it didn't just cause a ripple, it detonated like a time bomb in the 20th century.
It really did.
So if Nietzsche destroys the foundation of objective truth in 1873, what happens when the rest of the world finally reads this? Let's look at the legacy and the sheer impact of this text.
The fallout was immense and touched almost every discipline. It is widely regarded as the foundational text for the entire 20th century linguistic turn in philosophy.
For instance, you see its direct lineage in the work of Ludwig Wittgenstein.
Wittgenstein famously argued that language isn't a picture of reality, but a series of functional language games played by humans.
That is Nietzsche's peace treaty and worn-out metaphors, modernized.
And it essentially gave birth to the massive movements of post-structuralism and deconstruction. Thinkers in the mid to late 20th century took this essay and built entire careers on its premises.
Absolutely. Take Jacques Derrida, the founder of deconstruction.
Derrida drew heavily on this critique of the Western metaphysical tradition. Derrida introduced the concept of difference.
To break that down simply, difference is the idea that the meaning of a word is never present in the word itself. Meaning is always endlessly deferred through a chain of differing signs.
You look up a word in a dictionary and the definition is just more words. You look up those words and it's more words.
There is no bedrock of objective reality at the bottom. Words only refer to other words.
That entire concept is a direct mechanical extension of Nietzsche's idea of the mobile army of metaphors. We are just trading effaced coins, never touching the raw metal of reality.
And then you have Michel Foucault.
Oh, Foucault, yes.
Foucault's entire project was analyzing how truth is constructed by power and social enforcement. When Foucault argues that a society's regime of truth is just a system of power dynamics dictating what is acceptable to say, he is building directly on Nietzsche's idea of the social peace treaty.
If truth is just agreed upon metaphors, then whoever controls the dictionary, whoever enforces the peace treaty, literally controls reality.
It even fundamentally shifted the philosophy of science. Thomas Kuhn wrote a massive, influential book on the theory of paradigm shifts.
Kuhn argued that scientific progress isn't a steady, objective accumulation of universal facts, but rather a series of historically contingent frameworks paradigms that eventually break down and get replaced by new ones.
It has Nietzsche's fingerprints all over it. Science isn't discovering the absolute truth. It's just building a new, temporarily useful columbarium of concepts.
But as with any radical philosophy, we have to look at the cracks in the foundation. The scholarly analysis we are referencing points out a glaring, massive structural limitation to this essay.
It contains a self-referential paradox that threatens to collapse his entire argument.
Yes. It is the classic trap of any radical skepticism. If Nietzsche's central claim is that all truths are just worn-out metaphors, then isn't his claim that all truths are metaphors also just a metaphor?
If all language is a falsification of reality, then Nietzsche's essay, which is made entirely of language, is also a falsification.
Why should we believe him if he is using the exact same effaced, worthless coins that he is telling us to throw away? How do you use a broken tool to prove the tool is broken?
It's the liar's paradox on a cosmic scale. But the scholarly analysis provides a very elegant way to navigate this trap.
It suggests we view Nietzsche's use of metaphor not as a claim to absolute truth, but as negative knowledge.
Negative knowledge means Nietzsche isn't claiming his essay gives you the true, objective picture of reality.
He isn't trying to replace the materialist's camera with a better camera.
He is using metaphor defensively as a solvent. His writing doesn't tell us what reality is. It merely destroys the illusion that our current concepts perfectly mirror reality.
He is exposing the contingency, the fragility of the system from the inside.
He isn't a lazy nihilist saying, everything is a lie, so nothing matters, let's all give up.
Yeah.
He is actually launching what will later mature into his vital doctrine of perspectivism.
Perspectivism is the profound realization that there is no God's eye view of the universe.
You cannot step outside of your human biology, your historical context, and your linguistic framework to view the universe as it really is.
The search for a standpoint that is not a standpoint is completely incoherent. All knowledge comes from a specific, localized perspective.
The gnat has its perspective, the bird has its perspective, and we have ours.
Which brings this 1873 essay crashing into the present moment, because the listener today is living in an era defined by what we might call epistemic fragmentation.
We're constantly talking about fake news, post-truth politics, echo chambers, and deepfakes.
We are drowning in a sea of information, and the traditional pillars of absolute truth are wobbling.
The algorithms that feed us our reality are literally equating the unequal every second of the day. Nietzsche's questions feel incredibly urgent.
He forces us to ask, where do our most cherished beliefs actually come from? He exposes our immense, terrifying capacity for self-deception.
But I know a lot of people might listen to this and feel a profound sense of vertigo.
It's disorienting.
If there is no true world behind the apparent world, if the objective essence of things doesn't exist, as Nietzsche claims, how does a person navigate their daily life without falling into complete, paralyzing nihilism?
If the floor just dropped out from under us, how do we keep walking?
I think the answer lies in a radical shift from passive obedience to active creativity. Recognizing that truth is a human creation doesn't mean truth is useless. It means we have to take responsibility for the worlds we construct.
We aren't passive receivers of some divine, unchangeable law. We are the artists. We are the architects of the columbarium.
If the laws, concepts, and structures of our society are failing us, we don't have to sit around waiting for the universe to correct them.
Exactly. We have the power, that deep, ancient, metaphorical impulse to smash the old rubrics, to forge new, better metaphors, and to carve out a new riverbed.
It is a philosophy that utterly destroys certainty, but replaces it with an incredible, vibrant, and heavy freedom.
Let's bring this all together. We have covered immense ground today in this deep dive.
We started out in the remote, freezing corners of an indifferent cosmos, looking at the fleeting evolutionary accident that is the human intellect.
We saw how our concept of truth wasn't a divine gift, but a pragmatic, desperate peace treaty drafted by a weak animal to stop itself from being destroyed in the war of all against all.
We journeyed through the actual mechanics of language, tracing those completely arbitrary, unjustified leaps from nerve stimulus to mental image to acoustic sound.
We saw how language is a mobile army of worn-out metaphors, how we construct a massive, fragile dome of concepts on running water, and how we suffer from a double amnesia that makes us forget we were the ones who built the dome in the first place.
And finally, we watched the clash between the rational man with his protective, stoic concepts and the intuitive man, smashing the framework with the joyful, dreamlike power of art and myth.
It is a text that destabilizes absolutely everything it touches. But in doing so, it wakes us up from a very long, very deep dogmatic slumber.
And so, I want to speak directly to you, the listener. You came into this deep dive using words and concepts that you trusted implicitly.
You use language every single day without a second thought to communicate your deepest feelings, to debate politics, to understand the science of the world around you.
Hopefully you now see those words for what they truly are. They are ancient, worn-out coins. They were forged by your ancestors, their faces rubbed smooth by centuries of desperate use, entirely designed just to help a delicate, soft animal survive a violent and hostile world.
The next time you find yourself absolutely certain of a truth, the next time you feel that arrogant, unshakable conviction rising in your chest, I want you to stop.
Stop and listen very closely to the words you are using in your head to formulate that thought.
Ask yourself, are you actually perceiving the raw, infinite physical reality of the universe?
Or are you just listening to an echo, the infinitely protracted echo, your own human voice, bouncing off a universe that is completely and utterly indifferent to you?
And waiting for the star to freeze.
Until next time.